What up, everybody in the chat? How you going? Hello, Devon, first in the chat today. TLD, thank you for that subby, which I spelled stubby. Welcome, Todd. Everyone in the chat, please welcome Todd. So awesome to have you here today, Todd. Finished. Welcome to the crew. To be here. Yes, we finally got this done. I'm so excited. Welcome to Isaac Fantoni. You thought you had stupid figures. No, I do as well. Don't worry, it's the two of us. Cherie, yeah, you're also first. Double first club today. Cherie, thank you for the subby. 3 months of hell. What do you mean, babe? It's been like 9 years. I don't know what you're talking about. Nicolita is here. Oh my god, so nice to see you.
Now it's a party.
Now it's a party. Slightly Appropriate is here as well. I said Isaac, didn't I? Obake is here and Finished 2. Sorry about my name. Didn't really think that through. That's actually hilarious. That's the best Twitch name I've ever seen. Isaac said semi-lurking while working from home, but keen to actually have caught a stream. Well, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. Todd, thank you for rescheduling at such short notice. About last week was like a bit of a drama, but we're here. We're here and we're healthy and we're good, and you're on the screen, so it's great.
Yeah, excited to be speaking with you and your great community. I've dropped in a few times and I've just been really impressed by how enthusiastic everyone is. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. They're such a great community. So we're excited to have you and talk to you today about your amazing music photography career so far. It's going to be a good chat. How's everybody in the chat doing today though? Tell us what's happening in your life. We'll just wait a few more minutes for people to join and then we will get stuck into the conversation. But definitely wanted to talk to you, Todd, about what's the COVID situation like? What's happening in New York at the moment?
Numbers are like a lot of places in the world. Numbers are going up. It's not looking great. They just closed indoor dining, for example, here in New York today. It's not quite going on lockdown like California is, but not looking amazing. So the news of vaccine approval and first vaccinations in the U.S. are a nice, a welcome thing. Let's put it that way.
Yes. What up? Sharita said she's got a donut on the way in the Uber. So I mean, what more could you have? What more could you want in life than a donut in an Uber? This is why she's my best friend. She knows. Goals in life. And Alias is in the chat. What up? Nice to see you here. How are you? Just a single donut. I know, you would think that if you were going to send donuts in the Uber, it'd be at least like a half dozen or something.
Sounds luxurious.
Right? She's bougie as hell. Like, that's why she's my bestie. So, you know, you get those donuts. One donut hole in the Uber. So you just say you're not going into another lockdown, but it's like the cases are spiking.
Not yet. Again. We'll see. Cases are spiking. You know, I think people are very willfully here in the U.S., and so obviously it's contributed to the current situation.
It's wild, Todd. Like,
yeah.
I'm just, you know, I'm talking to my friends in America on the daily, and it's like, you know, all of my friends are so sensible and awesome and, you know, doing all the right things. But if you've got, you know, half the population that are not, then it doesn't really help. Thank you so much, Mike, for the host. I appreciate it. It doesn't help your cause much, does it? If you're staying at home, you're wearing masks, and then like everybody else isn't. So
yeah, it's pretty wild. I think something like 60% of people in the U.S. are looking to get the vaccine, and that's it.
Yeah, so for proper efficacy, you need like, what is it, like 90% or something? Like, it needs to be right up there, 85-90%. So yeah, I mean, God, it's such a larger conversation about just distrust in science and all of the stuff that's happening. I mean, I'm listening to podcasts on this stuff on the daily, so I'm like constantly listening to these conversations. It's like, it's a whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It is wild. Welcome, Stanza. Nice to see you here. Thanks so much for joining the chat today. We've got Todd Owyoung today. I'm so excited to chat to you. We've known each other, I guess, via Twitter for a few years, I would say now. But it's really good to actually talk to you in real life. Well, kind of in real life, virtually in real life. Have an actual conversation that's not on Twitter. I'd love for you to give a bit of a background of what you do, and we'll get into a few questions. But tell people about how
Sure.
you became a music photographer and how long you've been shooting for.
Sure. Yeah, I got into music photography kind of probably like a lot of people, a little bit almost by accident. It was 2006, and my best friend was going to a concert, and he had been to a lot of shows that wanted to go to. We had different musical tastes. I was kind of more into indie rock, and he was kind of more into like folk and country. And it was kind of my turn to go to a concert that he wanted to go to. And so I kind of figured that, he's like got tickets to a band, to a show. I had no idea who the acts were. And I figured that I could just entertain myself by shooting photos of the bands. I was into photography at the time. Took my camera kind of on a whim, and figured I could entertain myself by just shooting photos. If I didn't like the music, I could always kind of have that one thing. As it turned out, the bands were amazing. It was the headliner was a band called BR549, and the opener was actually the Avett Brothers, who were playing to about 50 people at the time. Completely unknown at the time relative to where they are now, where they're headlining festivals and playing arenas and so forth. But it was a great show, and from that one moment, I was hooked. I was going to a lot of shows at the time, and I hooked up with a street press in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, and it was like, what can I do? I want to shoot concerts for you. I shot all of one, but I love it. Like, can I do more for you? And then my first photo pass came out a week later from that very first show. I was going to see an artist called Andrew Bird, and very naively, I emailed his publicist and manager, and I had no idea how it worked. And I, emailed them and said, hey, I have a ticket. I'm a fan. Do you need a photographer? Yeah. And his manager very kindly replied, well, we don't have a budget for a photographer, but I can get you a photo pass if you want. And I kind of thought to myself, whoa, a photo pass, what's that? Like, that sounds good. So I shot the show. It was amazing. And that's kind of, how it all started in 2006.
Awesome. 2006, okay, too.
Yeah.
That story is so common, I think, is that you see that pathway and that, like, okay, this is something that I really want to shoot, but you have no idea about, the process, I guess. Like, how do you get a photo pass? How do you do all of these things that, like, I guess you usually find out by somebody either telling you off, like, that you're doing the wrong thing, or like what happened to you, where somebody emails you and says, hey, this is a photo pass, and you're like,
you're like, that's what I need. Okay.
Oh,
great.
I meant to have a pass. Like, I can't just turn up with my camera. And
exactly.
Fantoni, I just dropped your Instagram in the chat, and Fantoni just said, holy shit, his work is crazy. Exactly. That's why we have him here today, because he's one of the best. And it's an honor to talk to you today. It's really awesome. That actually leads me really nicely into your blog, because I think that's kind of the reason why you set up your blog. And also, a lot of people know you through your blog too. Do you want to explain kind of what that is and how that came about? And it kind of went crazy, didn't it?
Yeah, well, so I basically, after 6 months of shooting concerts, I figured, like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I got the domain name I Shoot Shows because I wanted something really short, something that could literally just, yell over, like, a concert, like, a band on stage saying, like, oh, where can I see the photos? Like, ishootShows.com. So that's kind of like where the name came from, and it just sort of stuck. If I was doing it over again, I might pick something else, but that's what it is. And I just started using it to post my work. It was kind of the one outlet that I had. This is, there was Flickr and there were other photo sharing sites, but I figured that it was a good platform. And it wasn't until a year later that I actually started posting images, but it was the one platform I had. And I was, just posting images as I would shoot the concerts. And even little things like, very naively, if I found someone like reposting my images without permission, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so cool. Someone like reposted my images. And very naively, I would, just sort of like, that was a blog post. And then, but how kind of the site changed was as I learned different techniques or how to deal with red light or how to, pick lenses for concert photography, I would write articles on them. And just because at the time, there weren't really a lot of sources for people to learn about how to do music photography.
There still
Daniel
isn't,
Bode,
really.
Yeah.
It's still like... Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's still. I mean, they're all people, are very secretive, or they think that there are these kind of trade secrets. But I feel like I owe my whole career, or being known at all in any capacity, to this blog,
Mm.
because St. Louis, Missouri, it's not a huge town. It's kind of a middle market in the middle of the U.S., and it's big enough that it gets most of the big tours, not all the big tours, but most of them. And it's got everything from the small clubs to the theaters to the arenas and the amphitheaters and the stadiums. So it can get these bigger shows. But I'm really thankful in ways that I wasn't when I lived there for growing up there and being able to build a portfolio in a smaller city that was really, in hindsight, the perfect place to start out as a music photographer.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that though, like, because I've always found this really weird. And you obviously have found it weird because you've now got a blog that shares all the information. And this is kind of one of the reasons that I've set up this whole Twitch thing and this community, is that I found that when I started that people were so secretive and you just couldn't find out a lot of information. It was really hard. You had to make mistakes, and that can sometimes be really like get you blacklisted, as I've learned, like if you make the wrong mistakes with the wrong people. And why do you think that is? Why do you think there's so many people that are really secretive about those trade secrets, even things like rates, and I don't know, people are just so unwilling to share often?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't know if I have a great succinct answer, but I think it's part of it's natural. You think that, okay, I'm shooting this one way, and on a more I would say a more superficial level, technique can be something that separates someone who's a beginner from someone who has a little bit more experience. I think that, you could probably empathize with this. As people go on in their photography journey, you probably realize that there's more than just the technique, because that's the most easily copied thing, I think.
Yeah.
At least that's what I would consider. There are other elements like, how to work with, your models, how to build relationships, how to network. And those are the things that are a lot more difficult to reproduce. But technique, the actual execution of the image, is kind of the most simple thing, I feel. And it's the thing that you can get better at really quickly.
Yes. And I would go as far to say is almost the least important. And I've said this before, which people are always like, what do you mean that the technical stuff or like taking the actual photo is the least important? But I think in today's age, like everybody, especially the kids that are coming through, like they're amazing, amazing photographers. Like the skill level, I guess, the cameras that are coming out now, like everybody is so great. But like the part that's really, really hard to sustain is the relationships, the people, the ongoing clients, the actual business of photography, like the day-to-day, like time
100%.
management, all of that stuff. Like that's what's almost really impossible to teach, other than saying that it's important. And what up, Jim? I'm seeing you in the chat as well. He's saying, yo, this is so true. It's true, I think, in pretty much all styles of photography, but like there's so much focus on the technical. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. I think the business part of it, is in the chat. The business is what people fail at. I think that's 100% true. That's, obviously we're creatives, we're photographers. We get into it because we love making images. It's the fun part. That's the easier part. The harder part is, how do you create a sustainable business? How do you create network? How do you create value for yourself and distinction? How are you going to separate, yourself from people who are making images that are maybe like, 70% is good, or 80% or 90% is good even.
Yeah.
It's that fraction of, like that thing that separates you is increasingly small these days, especially the technology is so good. Cameras are so good these days that, technique is only going to get you so far.
Absolutely. And what up to Just Off the Six and Low Base? Thank you so much for joining the chat. Good to see you here. Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is that there's a bit of a point of difference in your business strategy, in that I believe you go out with your brother a lot as well, and you kind of...
That's right.
Yeah, you guys offer almost like it's like a package deal. If you come to shoot a show, it's like the two of you. Can you talk a little bit about why you did that?
Sure.
and what your point of difference is, and why clients, I guess, really appreciate that type of coverage?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. So my brother Chris and I, he's a couple years older than I am, and he basically saw how much fun I was having photographing music, and so he got into it maybe 6 months after I did. And it was one instance where, as the younger brother, I was finally able to do something first and like say like, oh, this is cool. And he was like, oh yeah, that is cool.
That is cool. Let me try.
Yeah. And so we started, we got into music photography basically at the same time. And we shoot in a style that's similar enough, I think, that we're complementary, but it's different where we can complement each other's strengths in terms of either live performances or working in the studio and so forth. But we would love to shoot together is another thing. And so at first, it was really tough because it felt kind of like a liability where one of us would get a photo job, whether it's, a gig or working with a band or a commercial job, and we'd always try to bring the other person on. And at first it's like, okay, well, why am I going to pay two of you either double the rate or one of you like half the rate and you're going to have to split it? And we always felt that it was always just worthwhile because we love shooting together, we love working together, and we've thankfully been able to build up a clientele that appreciates that. So we do tour photography for a couple clients, one management company, and they'll have us out. And at first it took convincing them. They're like, okay, well, I don't know if we need two of you. What if we need just one of you?
Yeah.
And we were kind of like, okay, no, like overkill is good. Like just let us do this thing. And I think they saw the value of it because we can take risks that one photographer might not be able to. So for example, one photographer, like I might be shooting on stage. Yeah. And Chris can go into the upper deck of an arena or a stadium, and he can get those really wide, expansive shots. And those are the kind of shots that take a lot of investment because you have to run up there. It takes a lot of time. You're missing songs.
Yes.
Like all music photographers know that. And I think that it's not just double the amount. That's the way we look at it. It's not just double the amount of volume, but it allows us to get the safe shots and get the really risky shots that you wouldn't necessarily if you're working solo. So that's kind of how we've tried to create value for our clients by, tag teaming things when at all possible and making images that wow people. And it's not simply, okay, it's going to cost twice as much.
That's, I mean, it's so inspiring for me to hear and hopefully for people in the chat too, because I know so many people are convinced that like clients won't pay for even one tour photographer, and here you are going, actually, we've got our business structure in place that they pay for two and they're getting value out of it. Like, I feel that's, that's really inspiring. And also what you just mentioned, especially for arena tours, like this is so valid because just coming off a tour where there were a couple of arena shows because we had a couple of support shows with Rule where he was supporting Shawn Mendes, but trying to get the coverage by yourself where you're just like, okay, you got to try and think about the moments, the bigger moments. Okay, when will I be at the back of the arena, which is like you're sprinting, like literally sprinting up the back of the arena, and then you're like, oh my god, everyone's got their phones up or whatever, I need to be on stage, and then you're sprinting all of the way back to try and get those moments. So if there was two of you and you could go, okay, we know in this moment you're on stage, I'm at the back, we can both cover this moment in it from different angles. Like that's incredible. That's so awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to work with my brother, and as you mentioned, the epic moments where the stadium's all lit up and that's kind of looks most epic from both either on stage or in the pit are the same moments where the whole atmosphere is kind of at the highest energy, and you want to get those like really ultra wide shots, from either soundboard or from like high up in the rafters.
Totally. I've just landed on a great photo on your Instagram. It's actually you're showing off your Nikon Z. I think it's the Z7 you've got in your hand. I can't actually tell on that if it's a Z6 or Z7. But I wanted to talk about your relationship with Nikon, and also I have to thank you because you were like such an inspiration for me to actually contacting Nikon, because like for years and years and years and years, I was looking at who the ambassadors were, and I never saw music photographers. I was like, they're ignoring us. They don't even know that we're a genre. Like, what's the point? I'm tagging stuff. I'm never getting noticed. Like, this is never going to happen. And when I saw that you're an ambassador in America, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to email them. I'm going to email them and let them know that I exist and say, hi, guys, this is me. And it was like the best thing that ever happened. And now I've got this awesome, relationship with them, and they're sending me stuff to try, and I'm a Z creator. And so I really do have you to thank for just giving me a kick up the ass.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. I think it was really, because remember we were DMing and you're like, okay, And
Yeah.
it was it's been really gratifying to see that that worked out. It worked out for one, and they're like, acknowledge your talent and have connected with you and your community, and so I'm just happy that that worked out first of all. But yeah, it's exciting to see. But
Yeah.
you
Yeah. So
mentioned there,
how did your relationship start?
it was totally random, and people ask me about how do you become a Nikon ambassador? How do you become a brand ambassador? And I feel like I don't necessarily have a good answer because mine feels like this like irreproducible series of steps that worked for me.
Yeah.
So I got an email out of the blue. I think this was in 2015,
Yep.
maybe 2016, and I got a very cryptic email. It was simply, basically like availability in October was like the subject line, and then the email body was saying how it was a letter of introduction saying, "Hey, I'm a producer for an ad agency, and one of our clients is Nikon. If you will sign an NDA, we're interested in having you on for our project." And so I was like, okay, I felt like I was getting catfish. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
sure if it was real, to be honest. It was like,
You're
okay,
like,
this
what
sounds
is
great.
this?
It sounds amazing, but is
Yeah.
this real? Someone's just punking me.
Yeah.
But so I emailed back, I signed the NDA, and it happened to be the campaign for the Nikon D500, which was the professional APS crop sensor camera that was released. And they were looking for people that had never worked with Nikon before, but who were obviously Nikon users.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of just, it laddered up to their campaign of a kind of a new type of market for the camera. And this was one camera that was also very, very secretive. There were no rumor leaks about this camera because it was supposed to be a surprise to the world, basically from Nikon Japan. And so no one knew about it. Got to work on this one project, and they wanted not only new people who they hadn't featured before, who hadn't worked with Nikon, but they also wanted new types of photography. And one of those was music photography. So we, shot with a band in Brooklyn here, and did a live show and portraits, and that was kind of the start. So I basically had that one relationship, and during the shoot in New York, they invited the Nikon USA, a few members of the team to the shoot. They got to, check it out, and then I basically just kept in touch with them. It's obviously, as we mentioned earlier, it's about building relationships, and I stayed in touch. And because the camera was so new and there were only, less than a dozen people in the world who had used it, but I now was kind of local to Nikon USA, who were just outside of New York City, I did an interview on the camera a couple months later, and was just my experiences, the new features, technology, and so forth, image quality. And Nikon USA, they liked that one video interview that it did. And then it was a year or two later, and they asked me to do another video on Nikon speedlights. They were relaunching the website on these small portable flashes, and they wanted to do kind of an explainer video on what you could do with one light, what you can do with two lights, etc. And part of the D500 shoot was also working with the SP5000, which was a new speedlight flash at the time. And so they'd seen that I could work with those, and they were like, okay, like let's try this guy out and see how he does. And I guess they were happy with the results there. And so those kind of three touch points, the D500 campaign, the interview, and then later this speedlight educational video were kind of what I had done for Nikon. And it was later, after a couple months after that one speedlight video, and I got a call from a representative, and he's like, how's your day going? It's like, okay, it's going good, it's going fine. And he's like, how about I make it better? And that's when they offered, like, we would like to
Gonna make
for you to
your
be a Nikon
day.
ambassador. And I was like, what?
Whoa. Yeah, that's so
'cause-
cool.
Because I felt, I don't know about you, but you think of brand ambassadors as people who maybe don't look like me or who are much older. Not that I'm super young, but I think at least I had it in my mind certainly that maybe in 20 years I could be a brand ambassador.
Yeah.
After I'd sort of had a career and that I'd done it, and so it was a total surprise. I mean, if I'm honest with myself, I'd never dreamed that it was actually possible to become
so
an Nikon ambassador.
That's so cool and so inspiring, and just like I said, it just it really just made it for me. Like I think I was very similar. Like I definitely saw the brand ambassadors for years and years, especially in Australasia. There was no women, like none. So I was like, they're not even looking at, like, outside this very tiny little kind of spectrum of photography, which was usually like nature photography and surf photography and whatever. But it's really, really changed. And like,
I think it really is.
I think with the Z series, to be honest, like I'm definitely seeing what they're doing now. Since I came on board as a Z creator and the different Z creators that they have, it's like done like a 180. There's so many women, young content creators that are doing really cool stuff. I've had a lot of them on, started to have a lot of them on for chats as well, and I'm going to have more in the coming months. So just because they're just doing different stuff, and it's way cooler than the same stuff we've seen for the last 30 years, like, which is great.
Yeah.
It's lovely photography, but I personally didn't really find it that inspiring.
Yeah, I think that things are definitely changing. I think that in Nikon USA's program, for example, there's, if you look at the people who are being inducted, it's shifting. And I think that it's certainly a conversation, not only age, diversity, types of photography that are being represented. And I think it's, just part of this important conversation we're having, the kind of the world is having, with this reckoning that, different people and their experiences allow them to tell different types of stories, and that there's value in those differences.
And just so much beauty in the creativity. I mean, one thing I'll definitely say in the last, the few months of this really huge surge in, especially the Black Lives Matter movement, and just consciously going out. I mean, I did follow a lot of Black creatives originally, but even like trying even harder to do so, and it's just like so inspiring. There's so many amazing creatives out there, and it's just like opening your little lens a little bit wider to all of the different things that people are doing out there. And I'm glad that brands are doing this now too. This is exciting.
100%.
It just means that the creative world is going to be so much more beautiful. Like it's only positive. I can only see positive things coming out of that. So.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. You sent me some photos that I want to talk about. We've got a raid. Deshaun is here. Deshaun is also
Deshaun,
fellow New York photographer. He's raiding. It's nice to see you here. How you going? I think he was playing. He was streaming a game before. I think I saw him online. So nice to have you here. Low base is surrendering to the raiders.
Shout out to Deshaun. We got to hang out earlier and he was in some of the photos that were, I think, featured a little bit.
Also,
I go on Instagram.
We're going to, let me just pull up that, I'll have to find let me just go back to this screen. I'll find the Dropbox that you sent me, and there's a bunch of photos that you sent me. I just basically said, send me some photos that have some cool stories that you can talk about, and we're going to do that now. So I'll pull up the first one, which is semi-precious weapons, I believe. Let's pull this up.
Yeah.
And I'll make it full screen. Here we go. There we go. Yeah, tell us about this photo.
So Semi-Precious Weapons are one of the first bands, like this smaller band, that really gave me amazing access. And the reason this photo is special to me is not only because all the guys in this band have gone on to do amazing things. Back in the day, Lady Gaga actually opened for this band.
Oh, wow.
And they have all kind of gone on to do amazing things. That Justin Tranter here, the lead singer, who's crawling on the stage coming at you, he's gone on to write more #1 hits than I can imagine or can count, including Justin Bieber's Sorry and like a million others for like Demi Lovato and Gwen Stefani and like literally like everybody. He's blown up in the last couple of years. He's an amazing, tremendous songwriter, and he's getting a lot of success.
That's so cool.
Cole Whittle, who's on the bass player on the right, is the bass player in DNCE.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
And so Joe Jonas's band, and then let's see, Dan Crean, who's not pictured, he's covered by Justin. He's like the drummer for Gwen Stefani. Like everyone in this band has gone on to do like, literally amazing things. But way back when, they were a local band, not a local band, they were a small band from New York, and their publicist lived in St. Louis, Missouri. And she booked a bunch of shows for them in St. Louis. And I, went to the shows. I was shooting for a publication that, was sponsoring a lot of their shows. And at these little like dive bars, basically, really small venues. And I just loved photographing them because they're this kind of glam rock band, super, super energetic. They later went on to open for Lady Gaga. But back before then, they were just this small, like grungy, like amazing live act. And I got to the point where I was friends with them. They were like sleeping on my couches when they come through. And for me, this image means you should always start local.
Yes.
Start small.
Yes.
Start with these bands that are going to give you the most access and the most of their time, because that's going to make the difference between amazing images or someone who's just shooting 3 songs for a national headliner, who's not going to have, you're not necessarily going to have images that let you stand out. But if you're shooting in these small venues that have no song limits, there's not necessarily a photo pit, but there's also no restrictions where you could shoot for the entire show. You're going to still be able to get amazing images, even if no one knows the band themselves, because I think that's the most translatable thing. If you can make great images of a small band playing in a nothing club, everything else is easy. The amphitheater shows are easy, the stadium shows are easy, the arenas are easy
to shoot.
You know, the lighting is dialed in for you. It's $1 million production, but if you can shoot in these small clubs that have nothing productions, everything else is so much easier, and you'll cut your teeth. You'll learn the skills, not only just how to deal with difficult lighting, but compositionally, you know, the angles that work for you, the gear that works for you. It's really a great way of learning. So I always encourage people who want to get into music photography to start small, start local, start with these bands that are going to give you the most time and the most access, because you're going to let you make images that let you stand apart from the people who are maybe have their sights set at only these big shows.
Yeah, you just touched on something really important there too, because like if you start out shooting those big arena shows for publications, and like they are really easy to shoot, they're not difficult to shoot at all other than compositionally and getting moments, but lighting wise it's not tricky to shoot those shows. But let's say you get booked on a tour and the people that you're touring are shooting these smaller venues, but you don't know how to deal with that. Like you need to know how to shoot these venues. Like the last world tour that we did with Rule, some of the venues were really big, but some of them might have been, let's say, 200 people, and the lighting wasn't great, and you've gone from something that was 1,500 the night before to 200. You need to be able to learn to get just as good photos that are going to be in tour books and stuff at that venue versus the 1,500 venue or the 2,000 venue. So like that's such great advice that you just gave. It's like spot on. Gypsy J just said, when you're getting started, should you approach the venue or the band about shooting? What's your opinion on that?
The band's always going to be a great place to start, especially if they're a smaller band. You know, they're checking their DMs, they're checking the messages that come in. At least if they're engaged with the fans, they should be. The venue is a good place to start as well. I mean, it doesn't hurt to try both, to be honest. I think that small venues at a level like this, where this image was made, there's no house photographer, at least there wasn't at the time. And there's also no photo pit. Yeah. And you'd have to kind of hedge your bets on what value you're providing for the venue and what they're getting out of it, what you're going to get out of it. But certainly trading your time for what's going to help build that portfolio that's worthwhile to you is, something just to consider. I think that it doesn't hurt to approach both the venue and the band. The band is going to come and go.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, if you're shooting for the venue, you don't have that relationship with the band. And so if you want to do band portraits, it's kind of, you have that kind of go-between. Whereas if you contact them directly and they know they're getting the photos from that, for example, or it's simply the show and you've contacted them, it's not the house photographer who, the band may or may not see the photos, but you're working with them to build images that are going to benefit them and you, I think that you're going to get better access. So even if you're shooting for the house, for a small venue, I would also encourage you, if there's a band's coming to town, you might already have access through the house, but definitely get in touch with the band. Say, hey, I want to, do backstage portraits. Can I give 5 minutes of your time before you go on stage, or whatever, and just build those relationships. That's really all what it's about.
Totally. Jim just said too, I've always found that you get better stuff if the artist wants you there. I would totally agree with
100%.
That. It's just that access is definitely next level. So, La, you're so funny. Gypsy Jada said, all of the awesome music photographers in this community have really made me want to give it a try when more shows start happening again. That's awesome, Jay. I hope you do get into it.
You and me both.
Yeah. Jay's an amazing photographer, so I'd love to see his music stuff for sure. Let's have a look at actually, what do we got? Next photo up is Aerosmith. This is like, I find like this is one of your most, I think, like, famous shots? Like, I know I've seen this photo. I feel like this is one that, like, represents you so well. If I think of you,
I feel like it is. I feel, and thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me,
Yeah.
really, because, you know, it's always. I mean, I think you could probably empathize with this, but it's always my goal to make images that maybe are iconic.
yes.
And I think that that's a goal as a music photographer. Now, I'm definitely not saying not saying that this is an iconic photo, but that's always the goal, because
Kiki
it's not up
said
for
that
me
it's
to decide.
iconic in the chat. She's literally just written
It's not up
iconic.
for me to decide. Well,
So she's decided it's
I
iconic.
appreciate that. You know, I feel like it's the fans. That's up for the fans to decide. That's up to history to decide. But that's always the goal. If I can make one image that represents not only, you know, the image of the night, the image of the
Yes.
tour, the image of the decade, but the image of that band's career or something that represents them, that's
Yes.
always a
Yes.
lofty goal. And
Yeah.
I always go into every photo pit thinking, okay, I want to make that one portfolio image, or that one iconic image. And you fail 99% of the time. But maybe if you do everything right, if you get really, really lucky and you're really good enough, but mostly lucky, you can make an image that will stand the test of time. So again, I don't know if that's this image, but this was an image that's special to me because it felt like this once in a lifetime opportunity. This was the 2009 Aerosmith tour opener in St. Louis, and it's special because, one, after this one particular show, after the tour opener, they moved all the photographers to the soundboard.
Yeah.
And for this particular show, we were given pit access. There was a thrust that you can't see, a thrust that was basically dividing the stage in two. And we were given access to one side of the photo pit, up to the thrust. And I had heard about, we went in, saw this, and I realized what the situation was and made sure to just basically be at the front of the line of the photographers going into the pit, so that it'd be the closest to the thrust and the closest to the stage. And this is just being, in the right place at the right time, having Nikon 14 to 24 millimeter on. This is the Nikon D3 full frame camera. And out of all the people, I guess I was just the closest. Maybe he was intrigued by the huge front element on the 14 to 24. I don't know, but for whatever reason, Steven Tyler decides to sing directly into my lens.
Wow.
And I'm shooting images, filling with the buffer, and this is just one of my favorite images from that event, because when does that ever happen?
It's so nerve-wracking when that happens, when they come up to you, because you're like, there's so much that can go wrong in this moment. So it's like, how many times has this happened where you're like misfired and it's like, oh, it's back focused, or it's like, I don't know, it's like you just completely missed it. Like, that's definitely happened before to me, that's for sure.
Totally. Yeah, either the focus or nowadays the buffer on cameras is so, it's generally large enough that it's not really an issue, but back in the day, you used to have, you'd be shooting and like something exciting happens, and okay, you're shooting, you get really excited, you're shooting a lot, and then it gets better. And when it gets better, that's when your buffer is invariably full and you're just waiting for it to clear, waiting on that one image.
Like, hurry up.
And so, so thankfully all the stars aligned for this image.
Oh,
and
I love that.
so this is always, it's a special image for me, because I feel like something that people recognize this image, that they're like, oh, that's the one image I think of.
Yes,
so that's
definitely.
why it's included in this set. So that's always a special one for me.
That's great. Seeker in the chat said, spray and pray, baby. It's exactly like that sometimes. You're just like, please get one of these shots, make sure that they're okay. I've told this story before, but the first time I ever shot Kendrick Lamar, who I am like the biggest fan of, but he walked over to my side of the stage, leant over and waved at me, and I was in such awe that I just put my camera down and waved back. Like,
amazing.
what an idiot. Just the stupidest story ever. But anyway, so I did get a photo of that. It's like so embarrassing. But anyway, I was fanning out too hard, so that happens sometimes.
I think that's a natural reaction, though. Music photographers, at least almost every music photographer I know, they get into it because they're fans. They love music,
100%.
and they happen to love photography, and they one day realize they can put two together.
Yes.
And I think that's that passion, and like it's endearing, one, to hear about that, but then it's like any other reaction, it's like, wait, what else would you do?
What else would you do? Kendrick Lamar was waving at you. You wave back, guys. So, But yeah, it's like and you know, I was really it was one of my first really big shoots back then. It was back in like 2012, so I was very starstruck, and you know, have learned my lessons since then. But yeah, you do. You just like I'm always singing or rapping or whatever in the pit. Like you have a good time as well. Like we've got the best job in the world. So it's definitely great to have fun with it. So we've just pulled up this shot of Metallica. Tell us about this.
So this shot is special. This was during their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony in 2009, and I was shooting for Fuse TV, who was broadcasting the ceremony. And I just love this shot because, you know, when are you going to see Metallica playing in suits?
Yes.
You know, shredding it, you know, in a suit like this. So, and, you know, then, you know, you see, you know, they look like they're having the time of their lives. And for me, there's just a special moment to be able to, you know, shoot an iconic band like this in an unusual setting. It was in this beautiful concert venue, and, you know, you know, the stars from, you know, all these iconic musicians, and Metallica just, you know, shredding, kind of dressed to the nines in like sharp black suits. And for me, it was special because it was also one of my bigger gigs, and it was one of the first big gigs that I got, again, from just someone finding my blog, someone Googling music photographer, finding my website, and then hiring me, you know, this kid. And, you know, so that's always a special thing for me. Kind of the first couple big gigs that I got, this being one of them.
That's so cool. What up, Scott? Just saw you enter the chat as well. Low Base is asking his very standard question about if you've ever encountered a snake. If so, did you step on snake when shooting music specifically? when shooting
not that I know. Not that I know of.
Not so far.
In all these years.
Yeah.
Not so far.
Well, if you go out shooting with Low Base, you might encounter a snake. He comes across them quite often. This is the most important question. Let's have a look at the next photograph. We've got Jason Aldean. Is that how you say his surname?
Yeah.
Aldean.
So this is one of the artists. Thank you. This is one of the artists that my brother and I work for. Country artist Jason Aldean, and this was him playing at SunTrust Park in Atlanta, Georgia, if I'm correct.
Wow.
And you know, he's a huge baseball fan, and so playing baseball stadiums is always a big deal to him, and he just kind of is you know, hugely satisfying for him. He just loves baseball, so playing in these shrines of the sport that he's a huge fan of is really special to him. But for me, you know, this photo just means trust. You know, to be put in this position where, you know, my brother Chris and I, we have pretty much carte blanche to go wherever we want in the stadium, including on stage. You know, whether it's on stage, in the pits, you know, front of house to the upper decks of the stadium. But for me, this is always a special image to make. One, because it's kind of, you know, he's kind of taking it in, and the crowd's lit up. I'm just out of range of the spotlights. The spotlights are probably hitting my toes of my shoes. But it's always something I never take for granted. You know, being in a position where you're trusted to be on stage, like, you know, a member of the crew is really, really just a huge honor for me. And so these are the images that I love to make, particularly when it's a huge venue like this, because, you know, it helps capture the scale. It gives the fans the artist perspective for what it's like to, you know, look out at, you know, 40 or 50 or 60,000 people and see a sold-out show like that.
It's such an honor. Like, anytime I'm in this position, it's always like that pinch myself moment. And also, I was talking about this with someone yesterday actually, but when you're in this position and you feel the energy of the crowd, and it's not actually meant for you, but you can still feel it, it's like a drug. Like, it is so insane, that feeling. Like, you can't compare it to anything. And once you've felt it, it's like that's all you want to feel. It's just like, it's so incredible. It's like, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely a huge buzz, and it's a huge thrill. And that's definitely part of it. It's that, you know, that's what we're missing right now is the feeling of live music, where, you know, it's something that between the artist and the fans and the, you know, you get to be in the middle of that. If you're in the photo pit, you're literally in the middle of it, between the band and the fans. You get to, you know, feed off of that energy. And when the band's amped up and they're having a good show, and they're, you know that makes the images better. When the fans are really into it and they're, you know, screaming their lungs out, those make for better images, and being able to capture that, it feels like such an honor to me as a music photographer.
It really is. Brittany's just joined. Brittany Longs has joined the chat as well, and she said, hello, Michelle, and hi, Todd. So hi, Brittany. Nice to have
Brittany.
you here. So good to have you here. Okay, let's have a look at your next image. Miley Cyrus. Great shot.
Thank you. This is Miley shot. This is actually the shot last year. This is shot for iHeartRadio.
Yeah.
And it's really such a thrill to be part of the iHeartRadio kind of team for these bigger events. This is at the iHeartRadio Music Festival in Las Vegas last year, last September. And I love making images, not only obviously of big stars like Miley, but stars, when you get an opportunity to photograph them, I love little moments like this. These are the in-between moments where she's not singing, she's not, maybe she's performing, but I would like to believe that these little in-between moments are when you get to see a little piece of the performer. A little insight into the personality, and she's just, she's taking it in, and I feel that's always really special to see those little in-between moments where you can see an artist and they're genuinely thrilled because yes, maybe it's their literal job to perform and to play these shows, but it still never really gets old to play to 10, 15, 20,000 people at big, massive events like this. And so I love capturing these little moments that aren't necessarily the big rock star moments, but they're the ones that feel a little quieter, that feel like a little bit more intimate. And I love that contrast between a huge show and this little kind of more intimate moment that you can get when the singers just, they have the mic down, they're putting their guard down, maybe just a little bit and taking things in.
I love that. Deshaun said, I live for those in-between moments, the little bits of rest or awe. That's so true. We had a question before, which I forgot to read out, but Gypsy J said, do you have a bucket list artist that you still aspire to work with?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a couple. Dolly Parton, in no particular order. Dolly Parton, Beyonce, Iggy Pop, REM. Probably others, but those are kind of ones that are on my bucket list.
Awesome. That's so cool. Jim just said, how do you guys keep things fresh? What sort of things do you do if the work starts to feel kind of repetitive? That's a really great question, specifically for touring, I reckon. Do you have any tricks?
Yeah, that's a great question, particularly for tour photography, but even music photography in general, because there's kind of, the kind of standard checklist of, okay, there's like the singer at the mic, the guitar solo, the drum shot, the wide shot, this shot. But for tour, I try to keep a mental checklist, and I never try to shoot the same part of the song in the same place 2 nights in a row. That if I captured it one way, unless I feel like I missed it or disappointed, there are times when I'll work on a shot where like, okay, I didn't get it that time, or I didn't get it the way I wanted to. I'll revisit that moment. And on tour, most artists have the same set list. They might change a few things, song, sort of show to show, but for the most part, they're creatures of habit. They have the same running set list kind of night after night. And so they do the same things. The stage blocking is the same. They're kind of in the same part of the stage, doing the same kind of general motion, and they might improv a little bit, but they're doing a lot of the same things. And so it's a great opportunity, one, for revisiting things and kind of nailing a shot if you didn't get it. But this is a great point in terms of if you shot the same show the same way, you get images that are very, very similar. And so I kind of make it a game and a challenge to myself to be in a different place of, for any given song, whether it's focusing on the guitarist one night and then shooting the bass player and then shooting, the lead singer and then the drummer or so forth. And just kind of looking at images. And also I'll do a download, usually the night of, or more likely the morning after a show, and I'll do the edit and kind of like look at all the images, look at like the final haul. I usually look to edit to about 2.5 to 5% of the total images shot. And I'll kind of look at the take essentially. And usually if it's, my brother and I are working together, we'll look at the days, the night before his take and sort of like mentally go through the checklist. Okay, we got this shot, and kind of index it with what we need to do for the next night. And usually once we get the set list for that night show, we'll kind of look, okay, we got, this shot here, we got that shot there, here's what's left on the list. And we'll kind of break it down like that and try to, just get something new. And for country tours in particular, they do runs where they'll head out from Nashville on Wednesday night. They'll play shows on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Saturday night they'll get on the bus and go back to Nashville. And so you basically have 3 show runs that are broken down like that. And so the first 2 nights, we might get the safety shots. And then the third night, it's kind of like all bets are off.
Yeah.
We've got all the safe shots that we know the client needs. And that's kind of our opportunity to get wild and be like, okay, we got like the safe ones. Let's go, the weird wide angle shots or the fisheye shots, or, the kind of take a chance shots is what we try to make on those third nights because of that. And kind of like, then it's like rinse, repeat, after that.
Awesome.
But
yeah, it's so good. Brittany's just said, which you kind of answered, but do you use different focal lengths to mix it up? Like one night with the prime or with the zoom? That's definitely what I do, is like really, I'll just try and challenge myself and just say, okay, tonight I'm just going to shoot on the 50mm all night, or the 85 all night, just to do something completely different, because it'll just, the way that you think about the show will be entirely different. Or I'm going to try some long exposure tonight, or just, throw in a technique that, once you've done, like you said, a bunch of shows, you've got the shots, you can be a bit more experimental.
Yeah, I think that's, I do that to a degree. There are certain moments where if I've shot, one moment in one way, I'll use the kind of weirder lenses or the more specialty lenses. So one of those is a 300mm f4 lens that I'll use for soundboard shoots or to get a little distance. And that offers a lot more compression. It's a much flatter look. And if I shot one, night from the pit, for example, I will take that 300mm on the third night or on a night that I want to get experimental. And definitely that's a great way to do it. I love, the idea of the gear kind of dictating your vision, because you do very quickly, okay, I've got the one focal length, the one perspective, and it forces you to make images in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it forces you to kind of think outside the box and to work with what you have. So that definitely is something that I do in terms of gear, for sure.
Awesome. Gypsy, I'm just going to go to your next photo, and while I do, we can answer this question of Gypsy J, who said, does it feel surreal to shoot some of these huge artists, or does it get to a point where you're just kind of used to it?
It does feel surreal. I think it's always a thrill, and that shooting big artists, shooting big names never gets old. Particularly because, some of the things we mentioned before, you feel the fan energy. The fan goes crazy when, their favorite artist is on stage and it's, in an arena with 15,000 other people. That kind of energy, it's different than a small club show, and one is not better than the other, but it certainly never gets old to play these huge productions and, to photograph artists playing to massive crowds. That's always something that I never take for granted, and it never gets old. The iHeartRadio Festival in Las Vegas is one of my favorite shows every single year, and it's something I look forward to because they have massive artists. And it's like shooting fish in a barrel, so to speak. It's just, you get massive names, amazing productions, and shooting for iHeartRadio, I have amazing access. So it certainly never gets old.
Amazing. We've got this shot up of, is it Wild Powers?
Wild Powers, yeah, Wild Powers. So this is a shot that's special to me because this is a band out of Seattle. And this was an image made as part of the Creative Live class that I had the opportunity to work on last year. And this was just a huge thrill to me. Chase Jarvis's Creative Live has been a platform that's been around for years and years, and they do all kinds of online learning where they'll have kind of these master classes or, sessions on everything from macro photography to business or how to, write a screenplay. But they have, with Chase as a photographer, they have a lot of their courses that are focused on photography. And this was kind of a bucket list thing for me to do, and had the opportunity to work with Red Bull and Creative Live on a music photography class, which they had never really done before. And Wild Powers is this amazing grunge band out of Seattle that we were able to work with. They were one of our subjects, and they played not only a show for us, but we also had just a backstage portrait, essentially. This is at the Corazon in Seattle, a really small, I think it's like a 200 capacity club, a literal basement dive, and the whole venue is themed with yellow.
It's really
and so
cool.
there's like these really like kind of nasty yellow curtains. The stage Curtains are yellow. Like everything is themed yellow. And this is a shot that was made right after we wrapped their live show. They gave an amazing, like, high energy set. And this was one of the portraits that we made right after it. And I believe there are two in this set, but this is the first one we made where the band's kind of looking serious. And, you know, I generally don't tell people to smile in my portraits because it never seems to come off as authentic. If you tell someone to smile, they will smile, of course, most of the time, but it's never a real, genuine smile.
Yeah.
And so, and obviously with musician kind of band promos and band portraits, what they are, obviously like kind of like hard, like, you know, kind of look is a thing. Yeah. And so I kind of just like pose them and they're like, you know, and they kind of, okay, you here, put your legs out here, do this, you know, put your arm on your knee like that. And this was the image that resulted. And
awesome.
For me, it was, you know, it was great. It was just, I love this portrait because of what it means for being able to work on that class. And, you know, it just being a bucket list thing. So this was the first portrait we made.
Yep, and I'll show you the second one. It's another one with a smiling.
And I don't remember for the life of me actually what happened, but it's, you know, you're talking to people and it's different if you ask them to smile, you're going to get one look.
Yeah.
I'm sure I cracked a joke or said something and like, oh, okay, we're done. And they're like, yay, you know, no, they're like, their music is very serious, but they themselves, you know, they put in the hard work of the show, and like the last thing they probably wanted to do is portraits. And so we're probably joking around about, okay, now, you know, you did your bit, like, you know, I'll get out of your hair, and they're like, yay. You know, and this is like the levity and like just, you know, them, I think, you know, showing them the portraits and how they look, and but, you know, just getting different looks. And so whatever joke I cracked or whatever the situation was, just getting different looks out of them. And I love this portrait just because it shows the Aldo side of this band, whose music is very serious, like super, you know, just intense. And but, you know, and this photo and their smiles kind of sums up how I feel about this experience.
It's awesome.
You know, so me as like I feel like, what was that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's so good to show those two sides of them. It's really awesome.
Yeah, and me, I know I'm like a shy, introverted person, and to teach a class was this huge undertaking for me, and I felt like it was a gift because that's not my natural mode of operation, is to, you know, to be in front of the camera and to, you know, be teaching these things, but was something I'm passionate about and was just an amazing experience. So this is how I felt at the end of the class.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Love, 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 love. Okay, let's look at the next shot. Disclosure, Lollapalooza. Very cool.
Disclosure, yeah. This was shot for Q Magazine. This is literally, they played their set at Lollapalooza, and this was just like a really quick.
Hang on 2 seconds, Mike. You keep talking. Sure. My camera's just died in the great position. You keep talking about the shot, and I'll replace it.
So I was on assignment for Q Magazine, and part of it was covering their live set. It was the first time the band had played, I believe, like certainly on the stage that they were playing, and part of it was just kind of day in the life of. And so we covered the live set, had that access, and then part of the brief was just to get portraits of the band if they're interested and available for that, and they were. And so this was right after the set. You know, they had their kind of artist trailer, and this was really pretty much like right behind their trailer, and it shows a little bit of the Chicago skyline after that, and, you know, just kind of like this like very like calm and dignified look that they were giving. And yeah, they're just like perfect gentlemen. It was really easy to work with them. They were super excited to be in Chicago and playing you know, this festival. And after this we got deep dish pizza, and this was just lit with, I think it was two Nikon SB900 speed lights. So I packed 2 speed lights, a soft lighter for the lighting modifier, and a really compact light stand that I keep for like very light kind of on the go setups like this. All that kit fits in one light stand bag, and, you know, just being able to produce portraits like this, even if you don't think of yourself as a portrait photographer, but you think of yourself maybe as a more of a live music photographer, being able to make images like this for a client or for a publication, it's always going to be valuable. So I tell people, even if they think of themselves more strictly as an event photographer, as a live music photographer, to work on their portrait skills, because you never know when you're going to need to put those into play. And it's just going to add value for your clients, whether it's a publication or a commercial job or the band themselves, to be able to pull these things off. I feel like most music photographers kind of gravitate towards either live music or more towards portrait. And there's no right or wrong answer. My strength, I feel, is stronger in live music, but I still love shooting portraits. And one reason I love working with my brother Chris is that he's amazing at lighting, and whether it's studio lighting or location lighting, and being able to feed off of them, get his insight and his knowledge for how to light things. He can look at a photo and dissect the lighting that was used and know what modifiers were used, the type of lighting, all that sort of stuff. And that's really, for me, super cool. But also I get the benefit from it and kind of have him compliment me in that regard for that kind of lighting kit. So if you have a client, we can kind of divide and conquer that way.
Yeah, I love that. Kiki just said, how long has your brother and you been working together? Has it been from the very start, or was it kind of a few years in?
It's kind of evolved. I think that one of the first big jobs that we had was for Wrangler jeans, and it was actually how we met Jason and Aldean. That was in 2009, and Chris actually got the job. An art director from an ad agency in Chicago found his blog, One Louder Photo, which may or may not be still functional at this point, but they found his blog and his portfolio, and they wanted to shoot an ad campaign. And at the time, Jason was playing really small clubs compared to where he is now, not playing stadiums and arenas and amphitheaters, but he was playing small clubs, and he was one of their kind of rising stars at the time and one of their sponsored artists. And that was probably the first big gig that we shot together in terms of a paid thing that was for they flew him out from New York and they flew me out from St. Louis, and we went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But we've basically been shooting together as often as possible. And I think that was the first big thing. But probably from the very start, to be honest, is, any opportunity we had, if I was shooting a gig and it didn't require a photo pass, he'd come along.
Awesome.
Or if I'd visit him in New York, we would try to get photo passes together for shows.
Such a great point of difference. And I love what you said before about the ability to shoot portraits. It's definitely something that I've really focused on during my career, and I think essentially it's taken over really the live music stuff. I do a bunch of live music stuff with Rule and touring, but the portrait stuff is really my bread and butter, which is I kind of saw that from a career perspective and I guess just general income perspective. It was a bit more beneficial to go down that path. Plus, I love shooting portraits. I love working with people, but you are right. It usually is one or the other. Most people focus on one over the other in most instances. This shot, I would say this is the other shot that when I think of you and you as an artist, I think of this photograph. This is this is mind blowing. I can't even. It just if I shot this photo, I would be like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna quit. I will never get a photo that is better than this in my entire life. So I'm just gonna hang up the boots.
Thank you so much for the kind words. It really means a lot to hear, because this for me feels like a newer image, but that impression that means a lot to me. And thank you. This is the band X Japan. And their drummer and band leader Yoshiki. And I was hired to photograph their show at Madison Square Garden. And X Japan's been around for decades. They're big in the 80s and 90s. They're basically Japan's biggest rock band and most successful rock band. And it was always their dream to play Madison Square Garden in New York City. And they never achieved it kind of late 80s, early 90s, at the height. I think it was the height of their kind of their fame, and they basically kind of, if not broke up, just had a hiatus for a little bit. And I think this was 2014 or 15, and they kind of made it happen. They played a one-night show at Madison Square Garden, finally made their dream happen. Wow. And I was hired to photograph the rehearsals in New Jersey and then the actual show. So I think there were 3 nights of rehearsals and then one final show in New York. And for me, this image is special just because it's it was the band's dream, their little dream of their entire career to play this one show. And they've played the biggest venues in the world.
Wow.
And, MSG is not the world's biggest arena, but it is the most famous. So so they say. And so it always feels really like an honor to photograph there, because the artists always respond so enthusiastically. For them, it's like a temple. It's a religious experience. They finally get to play this place they've heard of probably since, they started playing music. So, and that was the case for X Japan. They had this amazing production. It was a one-night show, but despite that, they had probably one of the most incredible productions that I've ever seen. As you can see, there's like a metric ton of confetti in the air. This is during the finale.
Wow.
And this is during the finale. Yoshiki, he's not the main singer, but he sings on a number of the vocal tracks, and he's literally like falling to his knees. He's wailing on the mic, dropping to his knees right in the middle of the stage. And I didn't know that this particular moment was going to happen exactly like this, but I was hopeful, let's put it that way, and I was prepared, and I knew that the finale was going to be epic because of the confetti cannons and everything. And so I tried to position myself here, anticipating the shot. And when it was finally happening, I was like, okay, it's happening now. Getting kind of dead center, fisheye on, and capturing this moment. And for me, well, I should back up. During the rehearsals, I talked to the band's tour manager, and I asked her, okay, I've got an all access pass, but you never know what that really means, particularly if it's kind of for a one-off show or you don't have a relationship with the artist. So I asked her, okay, I've got the all access pass, but is there anywhere that the band doesn't want me to be? Do you just want me to shoot from the pits, or is on stage access okay? Is like that okay? And she said, you have carte blanche, go wherever you want.
Wow.
You can do anything. And I was like, okay. And so again, by nature, I'm a very reserved person. I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to be in the spotlight. This is like kind of not my nightmare, but it's like I wouldn't normally be doing it if it wasn't my job. And despite that, okay, it's like the band wants the shots.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how I feel. You gotta just go. Sometimes you have to go out there and just do it. Because as much as it feels like, oh, I'm on stage, people are looking at me, they're not looking at you. They're paying attention to the band.
Yeah,
they're like they could care less. They couldn't care less about you. They just think I'm just all in black.
Yeah.
They think I'm just like a stage hand or whatever. I'm just doing the job.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, long story short, this ended up being my favorite image from that show, and kind of for me, very taking literally. Okay, you have all access. Go wherever you want. Do whatever you want. Make the images the band wants. And so this is me trying to capture them achieving that lifetime goal as a band of playing, this iconic venue in New York, and kind of having that capstone on their career.
Imagine having this photo of yourself. It's wild. It's so cool. Gypsy said, so cool, you're literally documenting moments in history in a way. Absolutely, that's what's happening. Yeah, 100%. Fantoni said, plot twist, people cheered and all the party was for Todd. That'd be hilarious if it was your birthday. You're like, that's actually for Todd. You were saying before how you're a reserved person, and this sort of thing is your worst nightmare. I'm not a reserved person, and this sort of thing is still, it's nerve-wracking. Anytime you're anywhere near like the where people can see you, oh my god, it's just the worst. Just like, oh.
And I think a lot of it, as photographers, that like it's mostly in our heads. That again, they're
no one's
like,
looking at us. You're 100% true.
Yeah.
Although I should say, at rule shows, after the show, I'll always get this random videos from fans that'll like zoom in on me and like take
That's
videos
amazing.
of where I'm from. But I think that's a quite unique situation. If you're shooting for people that don't really know you or whatever, they won't take any notice. You're so bright. They'll just be like, there's a person doing a thing, and they actually probably wouldn't even register, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right. I think part of it goes to just, if you look like you know what you're doing, you're just calmly walking out there.
Yeah.
No one pays, they don't even blink. They're just like, okay, it's just the guy. It's only, I think, in hindsight, if you're kind of looking more tentative, or you're like, don't know, you're unsure, that's when it draws attention to yourself.
Yeah, that's very true.
So it's just, you just kind of have to walk the
Own
walk,
it.
talk the
Own
talk.
it.
Yeah, just own it.
I had to take a similar shot for a K-pop band called GOT7, where they went a little bit further down the catwalk, and I had to come basically where the singer was standing. I had to be standing there to take the photo, and it was like an arena like this, and I was like, oh my god, quick, take it and run off, let's go.
I totally
That's
empathize.
hilarious. All right, let's have a look at the next photo. Oh, this is cool. This is awesome. This looks like it's an Afropunk or something. That's my guess.
It is. It is exactly. You called it. It is exactly.
Oh, I want to go
Afropunk.
there so bad. It's like my dream
It's an
to go to
amazing.
Afropunk. Yeah.
It's an amazing festival. So Afropunk it started in Brooklyn. Now they have Afropunk Paris, and it's kind of a worldwide thing. But Afropunk, it's a very unique festival. And I feel like it's like one of the most unique feeling festivals because people go there. It's not just like, okay, we're gonna dress up like a Coachella, but it's like a next level experience.
Yeah.
Where people go there to be seen, and it's not just a couple people. It's literally everyone. And so saw these like two amazing people, and I almost feel bad because you have so many photographers who are saying like, oh, can you pose? But the reason I don't feel bad is because they go there to be seen and to be photographed, and it's such an experience, like a fashion. It's like a catwalk everywhere you look. Like it's just like Project Runway,
this is
where
the
people
most perfect thing ever.
like put an amazing amount of time and energy into their looks for this festival, and that makes it really special. And you know, one thing I love in general to back up is just photographing the atmosphere of festivals in general. You know, I think that as a music photographer, it's certainly natural to capture what's on stage, but there's this wealth of lifestyle photography and fashion and kind of everything surrounding live music that's really interesting to photograph. And so I always encourage music photographers to take the time to photograph, you know, the crowd, you know, the music goers at these festivals and concerts. Not only, you know, and it's easy when you have the fashion like this at Afropunk and these guys with like amazing looks, you know, just to the nines. But you know, something that I love doing, particularly obviously there's like this beautiful golden light, and that made it even better for this particular shoot. But yeah, I just always love photographing the crowd at festivals.
Perfect. Such a great tip too. It's actually there's been a couple of festivals where that's just been my job, is like just the atmosphere stuff, and I really love it. Like some people are like, I don't want to do that, I just want to photograph what's on stage, but I love getting out there and photographing the atmosphere and the people and what's happening and the dancing and all that sort of stuff. It's like, it's so fun to be out there, and you know, that's your job for the day. It's way chill. It's way more chill than photographing what's on stage.
It's
if you're
super
doing
chill,
you know, a million
and more to the
acts.
point, it can be what brands pay for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you know, the acts from one year to the next, the acts will change. So like photographing, for example, I was a couple years ago on the official photo team for Leeds Festival, which is amazing. And Danny North, shout out, Andrew Witten, shout out. Those guys have put together a great photo team and got to shoot with my friends, and Daniel Bode, actually, also Australian.
Daniel, I love Daniel.
Daniel is amazing. Actually, shout out to Daniel.
We need to
His
get him
blog,
on here, actually. He is...
You do.
Yeah, 100%.
You should.
On the list.
But back in ancient times in 2006, when I was Googling for how do you take a photo at a concert, I found Daniel's blog.
Oh, wow.
And he had this, I don't know if it's still up there now, but he had this one, basically, it was like concert photography 101, how to shoot live music. And it was a bunch of the tips that he had put together, and it was like, you know, white balance and manual exposure and the ISO to use and the white balance, all that stuff. And his blog inspired me to start my own blog and to start sharing those tips. And it was really special to be able to, you know, years later, not only tell Daniel that, but also shoot alongside him at Leeds Festival on the team.
That's so cool. He's so lovely too. So for those who don't know, he does he does a lot of stuff with the Sydney Opera House now, actually, but he also usually heads up the Laneway Festival team as well. So that was the last time I saw him, because it was the last festival I shot, but he was the head of the Laneway Festival team. So yeah, he's a legend. He's so lovely too.
He is a legend, and he, you know, I know he sort of moved on from doing exclusively music, but
Yeah.
you know,
He
he was
has. Yeah.
definitely an inspiration early on,
Yeah.
for sure. And it was just part of the reason it's a cool story for me is not only getting to, you know, meet him and be friends with him years later, but just that I love the fact that there's this international community of music photographers. You can connect with people around the world, and it's more, you know, it's easier now than ever with Instagram and communities like yours to connect with other people who are passionate about the same thing you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Katie. She just subscribed for 8 months. 8 months in a row, which means she is OG. She's been here. She's a day oneer. Day one, Katie. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Let's have a look at got 2 more photos. Now, this set of FKA twigs, I don't know if you did multiple shows or I've just seen a bunch of photos from the same show, but this stuff is stunning, like absolutely stunning.
Oh,
really
thank
gorgeous.
you so much. Yeah, this was last year. This was the one show that I wasn't actually on tour for that I shot the most. I think it ended up being 5 total shows. It was twice at the Park Armory in New York, shooting for Red Bull. They're one of the sponsors for the New York stops. It was once shooting at Afropunk that summer, and then actually shooting for FKA Twigs herself and for her team when they played King's Theater in Brooklyn towards the end of the year. But I came in, you know, kind of, you know, I knew her earlier work, and at the end of the year, by that time of the King's Theater show, I was totally obsessed because the production wasn't lavish. It was very stripped down, but Twigs is just an amazing performer. She's a powerhouse. And what she could do with very little, what seemed like a restrained production, and just herself and like a few spotlights and a little bit of smoke and some haze, like that, it was amazing. And I became an instant fan from that. So this is a photo from one of the Park Armory shows. And it's just, you know, again, this is kind of going back to that idea of capturing these little quiet moments, these in-between moments that I think Deshaun would feel me on.
Amazing.
But and this was actually the show that convinced me to totally go mirrorless.
Oh yes.
Also,
Brittany asked a question about that, which I was going to follow up, but just in terms of how you're finding that and workflow. So that's a good little segue.
Yeah. So I think before I was shooting with 2 Nikon D850s, which is a pretty high megapixel camera, like a 46.5 megapixel camera. And I love shooting high megapixel cameras because I'm just a glutton for pain, I guess. A lot of people would opt for like a lower resolution one, but I just love having as much detail as possible. And all things equal, when you scale it down, I think it kind of nets out to be roughly equivalent, downsampling and reducing noise and so forth. But before, so I was shooting the D850 as a DSLR, and I took it up upon myself to just, as a challenge, shoot mirrorless for this show. And I loved it. In like really difficult, tricky lighting situations like this, where it's kind of moody, it's very atmospheric. I love the ability of mirrorless just to be able to see exactly what you're going to get.
Oh yeah.
To be able to dial in the white balance, to dial in the exposure, and it almost felt like having like a superpower.
Yeah.
Because with a DSLR and an optical viewfinder, you see the scene as it's presented, but not how it's being captured.
Yeah.
Whereas with mirrorless, as we know, you get to see what you're going to get. And I think there's a lot of freedom and power in that, and being able to see that and deal with really tricky lighting instead of having to shoot, you know, look on the camera and see, okay, here's what I'm getting, and then compensate.
You know straight away.
You know, just exactly. And this is not something that's new, but for me, it was a revelation, and it's what sold me partially on mirrorless.
Yeah. I had a really similar experience. Like I basically hired the Z6 for a shoot for Billie Eilish, and as soon as I saw those photos, I was like, I'm buying this camera tomorrow. Like, I don't care. It was game changing for me. Like, absolutely game changing. Yeah. Really noticed the difference straight away. Just wanted to welcome Nate Design as well. Just saw you followed. Thank you so much for the follow. Really appreciate you being here. These shots that you took, there's been a bunch that I've seen on your Instagram over the past year or so, and there's just I can't fault them. They're just so stunning.
I'm
really
so
beautiful.
obsessed, and I keep posting them. I'm trying to like kind of like space them out, but I can, you know, I became like totally obsessed, like a huge, you know, FKA Twigs stan by the
Yeah.
end of the year, and was like, it was just
She
an
is
amazing.
amazing.
I feel like everyone who photographed the show or saw the show was the same way, where like I know other photographers who had shot a similar number. Cohen Rees also shot I think 6 actually shows, and like she was also obsessed. But it was an amazing production.
Just beautiful.
And really special to capture.
Yeah, and you did such a great job of doing it. You did it justice, that's for sure. Let's have a look at your last photograph. This goes back to what we were saying before about capturing the people it shows. This is a base nectar photograph. Tell us about this.
Yeah, going back to the, capturing not just what's on stage, but I always like to say, sometimes the best show isn't on stage. It's 180 from that, and it literally just means turning around. And certainly for EDM music, it's easier because maybe the producer or the DJ is not really doing as much.
Yeah.
It is from song to song, but I love capturing these moments of fans because this is why I don't know about we talked about this earlier. We all start out as music fans, and if we can make if we make images the fans love, I feel like I've done my job. And so I love capturing their experience for live music because, like you have these fans, not only from like, the woman being kind of like squished and her friends like hitting her in the head, the other friend on the right's like losing it. It's like people's hands are in the air. Like, these are just these, and a lot of times you take a photo like this, it's not always going to turn out great because you're trying to time it. The lighting might be atrocious, but when you can capture an image, I feel that shows what the fan experience is like. I feel like that's one of my favorite things to try and accomplish, to capture that experience. And not only is it amazing for the fans because you can maybe if you're talking with them, you can give them the photo afterwards or send it to them. But also these are the types of images kind of going along the lines of the festival photography that brands will pay for that. They're interested in not necessarily just the artist photos, but there's a whole, kind of new campaigns are being produced around this music lifestyle. And it's the same reason that camera brands are partnering with music photographers, that I think there's certainly a heavy interest in this. And so being able to capture images like this, you could be shooting for Red Bull or for, another brand who wants to connect their brand with what we all like intimately know as like the amazingness that is music and live music.
Yeah, such a good point, and beautifully captured as well. I love getting these shots, even on tour as well, like for tour book stuff as well. Like if you have a couple of pages that are just dedicated to fan stuff, like it's so cool to they are able to see themselves and in all. It's not just about what's on the stage, but showing that how the fans are going crazy at particular shows is always really fun. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing these photos. They're so great.
Thanks so
really
much.
Great to talk through all of that stuff with you. Does anyone have any last questions for Todd before we say goodbye? We've had, oh my god, it's been an hour and a half, so we've had you for a long time now. But if anyone's got any last questions, we'll definitely throw them in the chat for sure. What's on the horizon for you? I know it's obviously a weird time for shows and stuff, but are you doing other photography? Like what's keeping you busy at the moment?
Probably the one constant for photography has been getting into macro photography a lot because one, it's easy to social distance and I can just like walk along my block. At least during the spring and summer, I was just, kind of like, that was the one outside activity I was doing, was like walking along my block. There's a lot of like people who have nice gardens and flowers, and it's like doing macro photography, and being able to have a subject that one, there's no other people that, I could kind of do, whenever the light was nice, whenever the weather's nice, and that's been a nice outlet. Otherwise, I've had a opportunity to do a little bit of work, shooting couple of commercial projects this year. Deshaun in the chat, he was helping me out as a male model actually. We did a shoot for Nikon.
Yes, I think I saw you guys doing that. It's awesome. So good.
Yeah, so Deshaun was my model for that, and that was great that was we sort of, again, shooting all outside, obviously, that's a big social distancing, wearing masks, doing it outside, that's kind of the new life. So that's been, a couple commercial projects that have came my way, have been really fun to photograph with, and they've involved, pulling in other photographers, which has been great as a subject. So doing that, doing a few artist shoots for artist promos that are outside. But yeah, it's definitely a weird time. It's kind of this lost year for a lot of people, which I, really feel for so many photographers. And certainly with live music, we're all missing that immensely. At the last show that I photographed, I think it was the very end of January.
Yeah.
And that was actually the start of a tour. And we did like a couple dates, and then those were like the rehearsal and warm-up dates. And then we were going to get back into it in March. And March just came and went.
Yeah, and it's going to be next March soon. Like, it's wild. This year's just wild. Yeah, I had a similar experience where the first tour was like rescheduled in January. It was supposed to be March to Asia, and then we were meant to go to a bunch of other places, and it just, as the longer it went, the more dates you just kept crossing off. It was so depressing. But we're like slowly getting there in Australia. Shows are starting back here. I think
I'm
internationally.
so intensely jealous. The fact that I think it was Ruby in Australia. I saw like it was like I think it was an arena show that she photographed.
It was the biggest show for sure. Yeah.
That I was like, we just can't get our act together, and they're shooting. They have live music again on Australia. Like, what? There's no justice. It's not that we deserve anything more.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I would feel exactly the same way if I was watching it. I felt that way actually when because New Zealand got their shit together straight away.
Right.
They did a really short lockdown, really hard and fast, early, got rid of COVID, total elimination. So they were back to normal relatively easy. So all my friends that are shooting in New Zealand have been shooting arena shows and tours and stuff pretty much all year. So I totally understand the feeling. It's so weird when you see other parts of the world and just like, oh, God, we could never. So we had to go through a really hard lockdown to get there. So it was worth it, though. It's worth it to get to this point, which is good.
That's where we're headed. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds.
Yes. Devin has a question for you. He's asked you, what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Pistachio. I think that's my go-to ice cream and gelato flavor.
Oh my God, I love it. That's so good. He just asked you what your opinion on presets are, and we just asked you about your favorite ice cream. So
presets. I generally don't use any presets. Generally, I don't do a lot of processing on my photos, to be honest. I think that my overall intent is to make photos look pretty much as naturalistic as possible. And if not, just better than reality. But overall, I try to recreate the lighting and maybe color correct to bring out more pure tones. If there's a tint, for example, that is kind of a little off-white, I'll just kind of bring that back to white, for example. But for the most part, and this is partially due to the types of shows that I photograph, where the production is generally like really good. I have that luxury, and but generally not having to do a ton to the images. And so, my overall goal when processing photos, if I can spend like 5 to 10 seconds per photo, that's my goal.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going really fast. I do really basic adjustments. A common, like in the Lightroom basic panel, for example, I'll generally, if I had to kind of generalize my process, I'll probably bump up the exposure, a quarter to half an exposure point. I'll bring down the highlights. I'll bring up the shadows, just to kind of maximize a little bit of the perceived dynamic range, and just I'll bump up the contrast a little bit, and I'll do a little bit of tone curves, and that's kind of it. That's where I stop basically. For most photos. And I'll kind of have that dialed in for the first couple photos, and if the images are close enough on a set, I'll basically copy and paste those settings for the whole set. Where those basic adjustments, again, it's like white balance, exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, and tone curve. And I'll tweak those kind of image to image after that. A lot of times it's just tweaking the white balance or just tweaking exposure, because the other sort of settings in terms of like pushing down the highlights and then pushing up the shadows will be kind of the look that I generally like. And so I can just kind of apply those to all of them. But I think that that's kind of my general go-to.
That's your workflow. Yeah, for sure. Love it. He also said that you're an absolute scholar with the pistachio answer. You like that answer.
Glad you approve.
Yeah, my process is really similar actually in that, but I usually do start with a preset, especially if it's on tour, start with a preset because the shows essentially look the same. So copy and paste and then tweak individually for each photo. But it sounds like a similar process, but you're just getting it like for that particular set, you tweaking and then copy and pasting. It's similar kind of vibe.
Totally.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's been so lovely to talk to you today, Todd. This has been
It's
awesome.
been a blast.
You've been amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us. I can't wait to meet you when all of this shit is over and we're,
When
back
all
in
this
your
is
hood.
over.
Yeah, absolutely get to meet you in real life one day for sure. Please chat,
Forward to it.
show your love for Todd in the chat. Really appreciate having a chat with me today. I'm going to stay on for a bit longer, guys, if you want to hang around. Just talk some shit, but we'll say goodbye to Todd, let him go. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks so much for having me. I just want to say thank you, Michelle. Thank you to your community. I've dropped in a few times, and it's just been a pleasure to be on here with you. And I know that it's really impressive to see what you're doing with photography and to see the passion that your community is bringing. Like the photo challenges every week have been awesome, and got to see the last one of those, and just inspiring. And thank you for giving back to the community so much.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. This Twitch community makes my life, so it's a pleasure, and it's great whenever you're in the chat. You're always welcome. It's always great to see you. So thanks again. Thank you so much for the chat today. We'll say goodbye, and we'll talk to you really soon.
All right, thanks for having me.
See you later.